Hi, my name is Kat McFarland. I'm excited about my presentation today. I will be presenting a functional behavior assessment and behavioral intervention plan. This is for the Capstone Intervention Conference for Northern Arizona University. The FBA begins with a referral. The referral came from Ms. Kinder. She is an elementary school teacher with 12 years experience. She teaches kindergarten. I met with Ms. Kinder in November, 3 months after school had started. She shared her frustration with one of her kindergarten students by the name of Dennis. Dennis receives general education services in her kindergarten classroom. After meeting with Miss Kinder, I learned that she had been struggling with Dennis since the beginning of the school year. 1 month after school had started, the end of September, they had an emergency support team meeting. It was now 2 months later, and Miss Kinder was still struggling with his behavior. She shared that he lacked impulse control. He would kick students. He would get really angry when kids were doing the wrong things, as he thought. He felt the need to police them. He also would get really upset if he wasn't able to be first. He liked throwing things. At recess, he'd throw sticks at his peers. This is when I learned about Dennis and became involved. A second SST meeting was scheduled for December 1st. During that SST meeting, it was decided that an FBA and a BIP, a functional behavior plan, and a behavioral intervention plan would be implemented, and I would spearhead the plan and form a team. The team included Miss Kinder, the kindergarten teacher, Miss Counselor, Miss Behavioralist, a behavioral specialist. In the district that I worked, they have 2 behavioral specialists that work for the district and typically do all of the FBAs. She had been involved in his first SST meeting back in September, more because she had already knew him and had already had a relationship with the family. Myself, and I would lead the FBA and my supervisor. A little about Dennis. In December, when I got involved, Dennis was 5 years, 8 months old. A kindergarten student, he lived with his mother, stepdad, and stepbrother, who was the same age as Dennis and in the same class. His mother was expecting a baby in February. His biological father was involved in his life and saw him regularly. He also had extended family who were involved, his maternal and paternal grandparents. Dennis was in good health. His educational history. At age 3, he was identified through Child Find and evaluated by the school district's early intervention program. After that evaluation, he was found eligible under speech and language. He received speech and language services for 2 years at the Early Intervention Center. Prior to entering kindergarten, the law states all children receiving special education services and that are in school, preschool, and receiving special education services are reevaluated. During that summer prior to kinder, when Dennis was reevaluated, he was no longer found eligible for special education services. So when he entered kindergarten, he was in Gen Ed. Dennis had a behavioral history, probably no surprise. At the school district's early intervention preschool, Dennis struggled there. He had difficulty with transitioning, problems with self-control, tantrums. He got angry, easily frustrated. He would hit and push. His peers. Now that he was in kindergarten, those behaviors were pretty similar. Hitting, kicking both peers and adults. He would also yell and threaten others. Since the beginning of the school year, he had been suspended twice. The first infraction was a one-day suspension for his aggression toward teacher and his classmates. The second infraction was a 2-day suspension. This time it was for headbutting Miss Kinder. The next step in the FBA process is data collection. I conducted a total of 8 interviews. I interviewed Miss Kinder multiple times, his parents, the school counselor, and the behavioral specialist, as she had already been working with him at that initial SST. There was a total of 15 observations. I did 3 full-day observations and an additional 8 others that would average between 15 to 45 minutes. The behavioral specialist conducted 4 observations. I consulted with a behavioral specialist on 4 occasions. Now the last piece, tracking of behaviors, as you see in this slide, was very significant. When the first SST was held in September, Miss Kinder was encouraged to track Dennis's behavior. That she did. By the time I got involved, she and the counselor had lots of data. I believe the Word document I received from Miss Kinder was about 30 pages long. She and the counselor had been documenting and shared all their information. I then took all that data and consolidated and created the following spreadsheet. The left side of the spreadsheet was all the different behaviors that Miss Kinder was being frustrated by. It lists pretty much everything. It even, when he cried or if he was tired, any kind of behavior they were tracking. Every red cell is when the behavior occurred, so you can see a visual trend by the spreadsheet. There was obviously a lot of different behaviors, and now it was important to narrow down the scope and identify which behaviors were the most problematic for Miss Kinder, or the most frustrating for her, and the one she wanted the FBA to target. The team worked together to identify those specific behaviors and to operationally define it. It was decided that aggression was the targeted behavior. The operational definition. Aggression behavior was described as verbal, nonverbal, and physical threats, clenched fists, kicking, pushing, headbutting, squeezing peers' hands, throwing objects, tackling peers, yelling, and cursing. As part of the FBA, I conducted an applied behavior analysis. During direct observation, this tool was used in a way to collect information. To look at the environment that these behaviors occurred in. In Dennis's environment, we were looking at the antecedent, or the event or activity that immediately precedes the problem behavior. Then looking at behavior, which was operationally defined as aggression. Next is the consequences, or the event that immediately follows a response. Through observation, the antecedent, or the event or activity that immediately precedes a problem behavior, Dennis engaged in aggression and disruptive behavior when he transitioned between structured and unstructured times, such as recess. More likely when he wants his way, when a peer gives him a directive, when he doesn't get his way, when a peer directs him or corrects his behavior, when he is directed to do something he doesn't want to do. Through observation, we were observing and were able to observe this aggressive behavior, and we're looking at both the antecedent and consequence that is both before and after the aggressive behavior. The consequence, or the event that immediately follows a response. Dennis receives attention from his teacher, Miss Kinder. She often provides him reminders, warnings, one-on-one instruction, and often would negotiate with him. Dennis receives attention from his peers for this behavior. He's able to avoid work that is non-preferred or that he finds uninteresting. He receives attention from other staff, such as the counselor. The function of Dennis's behavior. It is what he gets out of this. The four functions that maintain behaviors are escape and avoidance, the individual behavior in order to get out of doing something he doesn't want to do, as well as attention seeking. It is hypothesized that Dennis engages in aggression behaviors to gain attention, escape tasks, activities, and avoid non-preferred activities. When he is directed to do something he doesn't want to do by the teacher, he will posture and clench his fist. With this behavior, Dennis is able to escape the environment that he does not prefer. Dennis also gains attention from his teacher and his peers because his teachers have observed that Dennis prefers to be by himself. These aggression behaviors have allowed him to gain access to those conditions. Dennis functions of his behavior. So the next step in the process is to gather baseline data. The data that was captured by Kinder, the spreadsheet I showed you earlier, I was able to extrapolate baseline data based on the operational definition that Ms. Kinder had collected. As you can see in this display of data, why Ms. Kinder was so frustrated. The aggressive behaviors were definitely escalating. So the proposed intervention plan. This was the time the team did a lot of brainstorming. This was part of the process that having the behavioral specialist on the team was incredibly valuable. She had all kinds of tricks up her sleeves and gadgets and gizmos and interventions that we were able to use and that she had experience with. Just to name a couple, they included a token chart, a quiet chair, so when he got frustrated, he could go do a timeout. We implemented a 3-card process where Dennis would hand the teacher a card when he was getting frustrated, and that would give him time in the quiet chair. Fidget items, at the top you can see a long blue ruler-like thing. This kind of was plastic and flexible, and he could use that to kind of distract himself and to calm himself down. These are just a few of the items, and in your packet is a list of all of those intervention items that we put in the plan. However, the one intervention that had the most significant outcome came from an idea that I had in the middle of the night. We had been talking about social skills counseling so that Dennis could learn more appropriate behaviors. Then one night when I was thinking about Dennis, I thought, wouldn't it be nice if he would be able to identify good behaviors from his peers? I was not even sure what that would look like, but then shared it with the team. Miss Kinder recalled a classroom management technique through guide language acquisition called Scouts. This is when you identify at least 2 students and you identify them as Scouts. They then are seated elevated from their peers, especially in a kinder class, while the kindergarteners are sitting on the floor, and they identify in a quiet manner the good behaviors. Then at the end of that activity or subject matter, the Scout identifies the peer that had good behavior and shares why he or she perceived that. Dennis was one of the first Scouts. He did that for about a week, and we saw a dramatic positive impact on his behavior. Then Miss Kinder and I talked, what about when he's not going to be the Scout anymore? Well, we convened again and talked about it and decided Dennis would be the one and the other Scout to identify the next Scout. This intervention had a dramatic effect, not only on Dennis, but on the kids. But in tracking Dennis's behavior, you can see the results. It had a quick turnaround, which I think surprised us all, but it really matched what Dennis was needing. Miss Kinder said the Scout intervention had such a positive effect because it allowed him to get attention that he was seeking, but in a real positive way. He was also beginning to identify those good behaviors. We were able to do this through the Scout program rather than doing a counseling intervention. Based on the evidence of measure, the effect size of the intervention as calculated by the percent reduction was significant at 80%. At the follow-up SST meeting that occurred in February, Miss Kinder said he is a different kid. She stated that he occasionally has meltdowns, but it is considerably less. His parents reports that he's doing well at home, and his mom had the baby, and he was doing well, and he didn't regress, which was one of the things we were worried about. The one thing we found interesting was that he never mentioned the new baby brother. He was doing well in school, and that's all that was important. In part of that SST, we were like, next step. Get him ready for first grade. The principal had identified his teacher for next year. Miss Kinder would talk to that teacher, report what we had learned about Dennis, his behaviors, and the interventions, and the report would go in his CUME file. Our FBA and our BIP was a success. Miss Kinder was pleased with the results. Dennis felt like a different kid, and he was generalizing those behaviors in all settings. What I learned from this experience is we as school psychologists can think outside the box. That is one thing I learned from this experience. Thank you, and do you have any questions?